Please, I have made the worst mistake of my life. But please, act to save me.
At only 22 years old, Otto Warmbier had everything going for him, until one moment changed his fate forever. A poster, a camera, and a staged confession. That's all it took for him to be swallowed by one of the most brutal regimes on Earth. But was this young jurist guilty? For over a year, Otto's story was shrouded in secrecy. What happened behind closed doors? And could anyone have saved him in time? For Otto Warmbier, the ordinary rituals of airport security took a sharp, unexpected turn. On January 2nd, 2016, as his tour group lined up to leave North Korea after a tightly managed New Year's trip, two soldiers quietly approached and led him away. There was no warning, no explanation. His roommate, Danny Grattan, watched helplessly as Otto disappeared from the line. An official told the rest of the group that Otto had fallen ill and was being taken to the hospital. In reality, Otto had just become a prisoner of the regime. Otto was a University of Virginia student, curious and eager to see the world. He'd traveled before, but North Korea was different, strange, tightly controlled, and unpredictable. The only red flag he noticed before the trip was the slogan from Young Pioneer Tours: "Destinations your mother would rather you stayed away from." For Otto, that was part of the draw. The tour itself was filled with the usual orchestrated experiences, monuments, parades, and the ever-watchful eyes of government guides. But nothing in those 5 days hinted at what would happen next. After his sudden detention, Otto vanished from public view. It took 2 months before North Korean authorities announced what he was accused of: a hostile act. They labeled it as stealing or damaging propaganda linked to the supreme leader. Specifically, they claimed he had tried to take a propaganda poster from a restricted area in his hotel. The regime presented this as a grave offense, but to outsiders the charge seemed wildly disproportionate. North Korea released a grainy low-light clip. It didn't clearly show Otto or even confirm a missing poster. The evidence was thin, and the story behind it didn't add up. The official narrative only grew more bizarre. On February 29, 2016, Otto appeared at a press conference, standing stiffly at a podium, flanked by officials. He read from a script, claimed involvement with a Methodist church and a secret society, both implausible since Otto was Jewish with no ties to either. He described using the quietest boots to sneak into a staff-only floor and remove a poster as some kind of initiation. He said he was promised rewards by outside organizations and that his goal was to undermine the North Korean people's motivation. The confession was delivered in a trembling voice, and his demeanor suggested fear and exhaustion. To his family and friends back home, it was clear the confession was forced. The inconsistencies piled up. Otto's roommate said he was not even at the hotel when the alleged theft happened. The video evidence was inconclusive at best. The details of the confession, secret societies, churches, CIA ties, were not just implausible, they were impossible. Experts and observers saw a pattern. North Korea had a history of detaining foreigners and using them as leverage in diplomatic disputes. Otto's arrest came at a time when tensions between North Korea and the United States were escalating. With missile tests and nuclear threats dominating headlines, Otto, it seemed, was being used as a pawn in a much larger game. Within weeks of his public confession, the North Korean Supreme Court sentenced Otto to 15 years of hard labor. The severity of the punishment given the alleged crime was a clear signal. This was about more than a poster. Otto's fate was sealed not by what he had done, but by where he was and when. His family was left in the dark, desperate for any news. Months passed with no word about his condition. The silence from North Korea was chilling. Otto had vanished into a system known for its brutal prison camps and harsh punishments. He was no longer just a college student abroad. He was a symbol in a high-stakes standoff between nations. But questions remained. Why frame a tourist, and how did that grainy video decide his fate? For over a year, Otto's family waited, hoping for answers, not knowing what had become of him. The next time they would see their son, everything would be different. There was a feeding tube in his nose. The Otto who returned bore almost no resemblance to the vibrant young man who had left for North Korea just 18 months earlier. Medical teams in the US rushed to examine him. Brain scans revealed extensive damage, so severe that doctors compared it to what happens after a prolonged loss of oxygen, likely from cardiac arrest. The symmetrical damage on both sides of his brain ruled out a single blow to the head. Instead, it suggested a period of oxygen deprivation, possibly from respiratory failure or a cardiac event. There were no healing fractures or broken bones, but a large scar on his foot and the state of his teeth raised more questions. North Korea said he fell into a coma after a sleeping pill triggered botulism, an explanation US doctors disputed because his injuries pointed to oxygen deprivation, not standard botulism symptoms. There were no clear signs of botulism, such as muscle paralysis or specific neurological symptoms, and the timeline didn't fit. Otto's parents and doctors were left with more questions than answers. The North Korean doctors who had cared for him claimed he arrived at their hospital in worse condition than when he was released, but they offered little evidence to support their story. For Fred and Cindy Warmbier, the reunion was shattering. They tried everything, playing Otto's favorite music, talking to him, holding his hand, but Otto remained silent and unresponsive. The hope that had kept them going for over a year quickly faded. After 6 days, the heartbreaking reality became clear. Otto would never recover. With heavy hearts, his parents made the decision to remove his feeding tube. On June 19, 2017, Otto Warmbier died, surrounded by his family. The US government held North Korea responsible for Otto's death, calling his treatment barbaric. But the true story of what happened during his captivity remains a mystery. Ottodi Warmbier Bergs and space today, the scars, the conflicting explanations, and the lack of transparency all point to something much darker than what was officially admitted. Even after all that, the full truth of what happened in those cells may never be known. Stories like Otto's force us to confront the hidden dangers that can come with traveling to certain parts of the world.